Ben Whittaker absolutely destroys Brian Suarez with a first round knockout. That was the most easiest fight that Ben Whittaker could ever dream of. Job done. It was an easy win. It was easy money, and Ben Whittaker just moves on to the next fight. Look, I did not expect Suarez to provide any resilience. I did not expect Suarez to test Ben Whittaker because Ben Whittaker is a much better fighter than Suarez. Let's be honest, guys. Suarez is British level, maybe area level at best, and he was picked for Ben Whittaker to look good, to build his confidence. Fighters need these sort of fights. I know that, some fans will criticize Ben Whittaker for the opponent, and sometimes I have been doing that, but I do realize that fighters need guys like Suarez that they can knock out, they can build your confidence, and then they can move on from there. I mean, Mike Tyson had those in his days. Mike Tyson was fighting 5-6 times a year, just knocking out guys and building his confidence and then becoming the fighter that he became. So I'm not really mad at, Ben Whittaker fighting someone like a Suarez, which, he was able to knock out, in one round. As you can see there, Suarez is on a canvas after Ben Whittaker landing that overhand right to the temple, a shot that sort of messed about with, Suarez's equilibrium. And when you're hit with those shots, it's just difficult to recover from because, they mess about with your balance. And Brian Suarez was just not able to, continue this fight. But look, it was a fight where Ben Whittaker had to be patient in that first round because Brian Suarez is very one-dimensional. He's got a high guard, he comes forward, and, he's looking to land a lucky shot, a big shot. So Ben Whittaker established his jab, to the body, to the chest, taking his time in there and, going to the body. And then, Brian Suarez opened up and gave Ben Whittaker the opportunity to land that big shot and ended that fight. So look, Ben Whittaker, he moves on from here. The question is, who is Ben Whittaker going to fight next? Because guys, let's be honest, Ben Whittaker is not going to learn a whole lot of things fighting someone like a Brian Suarez. He's not, right? What this fight is a confidence builder. This fight is a fight that, you get highlight reel knockout from it. You gain some good confidence from that, and then you move forward. So I don't think that Ben Whittaker can keep fighting the likes of Brian Suarez. He needs to fight someone that will challenge him. Ben Whittaker needs to fight someone that will bring something out of him that we don't know yet. And of course, we saw that fight against Liam Cameron. Ben Whittaker struggled in that fight because Liam Cameron, was not a pushover in the first fight. Of course, in the second fight, Ben Whittaker did a much better job and got rid of Liam Cameron. So look, we need to see more from Ben Whittaker. And I think Eddie Hearn has mentioned that Ben Whittaker will be back in the ring, I think maybe 3 or 4 times this year. So it'll be interesting to see who he fights next. But when we look at the light heavyweight division and the rankings and who Ben Whittaker could fight next, and as you can see here, Dimitri Bivol is definitely the champion, absolutely. Number 1 there is Artur Beterbiev. You've got David Benavidez, you've got Callum Smith. I don't think that Eddie Hearn will put Ben Whittaker in there with any of the names that I've mentioned. He's definitely not fighting Callum Smith, and he's not fighting David Benavidez, and definitely not fighting Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol. So then we go down, you've got Albert Ramirez, maybe a fight that they could have, but I'm not sure that Eddie Hearn will put Ben Whittaker in there with anyone in the top 5 or in the top 6. And then you've got Anthony Yarde. Right now, as we speak, I would pick Anthony Yarde to beat Ben Whittaker because I think Anthony Yarde is just a much better polished, maybe not boxer than Ben Whittaker, because I think Ben Whittaker has a really good amateur background, right? He's an Olympian, he can box. But I think Anthony Yarde, although has his limitations, I think Anthony Yarde, can bang, and Anthony Yarde is a bit more resilient than Ben Whittaker at this stage of his career. So that would be interesting to see. But then, you got Yarde at number 5, and then you've got David Morrell. As I can understand, David Morrell has called out Ben Whittaker. So will they do that? Like, will Eddie Hearn put Ben Whittaker in there with David Morrell? That is a question. That is something that Eddie Hearn needs to think about. And would Ben Whittaker at this stage take David Morrell? I don't think Ben Whittaker is scared to take David Morrell, but people that are managing him, like Eddie Hearn and Andy Lee, maybe they wouldn't advise him to take on someone like David Morrell. That would be interesting to see. And then you've got this guy here, Imam Katayev, who is number 7. And then you've got Joshua Buatsi, number 8. Now, I don't think Ben Whittaker will fight Joshua Buatsi. I don't think so. I think Joshua Buatsi, is a much better fighter than Ben Whittaker. I think Joshua Buatsi is tough. I think Joshua Buatsi hits probably harder. I think Joshua Buatsi is battle hardened. I think Joshua Buatsi is much more resilient. So I don't see, Eddie Hearn and Ben Whittaker's team putting Ben Whittaker in there with Joshua Buatsi. I think that would be way too much of a risky fight because if Joshua Buatsi should beat Ben Whittaker right now, I don't think Ben Whittaker comes back from that because, they're trying to build him carefully. They're trying to take their time, to make sure that, the likes of Bivol and Beterbiev are gone out of the division. David Benavidez probably wouldn't be there anymore. And then, he can get the opportunity to win a world title. So I think they're very, very careful with, matching Ben Whittaker with the right person right now. And then, of course, you have Willie Hutchinson. Now, this is a fight that I believe probably happens this year, right? Ben Whittaker versus Willie Hutchinson. This is a fight that I think this year probably happens because, when you think about it, Ben Whittaker looking to build his confidence, looking to get some really good domestic opponents on that can challenge him. I think Willie Hutchinson, he's got an awkward style. He's really hard to hit. He's tough. It's hard to stop him. You're going to beat him, but it's really hard to stop someone like Willie Hutchinson because he's very slippery and he's very, very difficult to predict what he's going to do in the ring. So he's a really good fighter. So I think that somewhere this year, Ben Whittaker versus Willie Hutchinson is definitely a fight that we could see. And then, of course, number 10 on the ranking is Neji Lopez. Will they put Ben Whittaker in there with Neji Lopez? He's got 13 KOs. So, someone that could maybe provide some sort of resilience, could maybe provide some sort of challenge to Ben Whittaker. It'll be interesting to see. But look, as you can see there, guys, this is the light heavyweight rankings. And if Ben Whittaker wants to put himself in a position of, maybe fighting for a world title, then he needs to fight someone in the top 10. He has to. And as I said, Willie Hutchinson will be the fight for him this year after fighting a couple of knockover guys, just like Brian Suarez, who he just knocked out. But, Anthony Yarde will be a fight too difficult, too dangerous for him. Callum Smith, I don't think they're going to do that. David Morrell, possibly, if they're very confident, they should try and get in there. And, it'll be interesting to see how Ben Whittaker deals with that. But guys, get in the comment section and let me know what you think about Ben Whittaker destroying Brian Suarez with a first round KO. And who do you think that Ben Whittaker should fight next? Would you be interested to see Ben Whittaker in there with Willie Hutchinson? Or maybe someone like Joshua Buatsi? Or even Anthony Yarde? Or even if you're ambitious, put him in there with someone like a Callum Smith. Would you be interested in seeing those fights? And do you think genuinely that Ben Whittaker beats any of those guys that I've just mentioned? Get in the comment section and let me know.